Here we are at National Sports Forum in Atlanta, Georgia with John, the CEO of Advent. So John, walk us through sort of the founding story of Advent and how you've sort of been operating in the sports and entertainment ecosystem over the last number of years.
Well, first, Russ, thanks for taking time to visit with us. We bought Advent back in 2000, and it was a trade show and exhibit company, and mobile marketing was in our DNA. But back in 2008, when we went through that recession, we just decided to do a pivot, and one of the markets that we chose to focus on was college sports. We knew that college sports fans were very loyal even through recessions, and that would become a defining moment for us. And since then, we've done 260 college projects with about 200 different universities, and from that we were referred into professional sports, and so that's become an important focus market for us is sports.
And what are some of the differences between working with a pro team versus a university?
That's a great question. Reluctantly, they would tell you that pro sports is about 10 years in front of college sports. And that's from a fan experience perspective, a sponsorship model perspective, a ticket inventory perspective. I don't know if you heard here at the conference, but Steve Koonin, the CEO of the Atlanta Hawks, talked about the fact that he has democratized the inventory within the Atlanta Hawks arena because he wants fans to be able to choose their level. Well, you know, college sports, that's not occurred yet. In college sports, there's still a tiering of VIPs, luxury suites, and so it's just interesting. Sponsors want to reach, on average, the average fan. Certainly some luxury brands want to reach out to that VIP, but on average, sponsors want to reach the everyday fan. And so that's some differences that we see between professional and college sports.
Yeah, and now you are working with more brands on behalf of, I guess, the properties and teams that you work with. What's the sort of process between saying, hey, we know we're going to work with X university, how do we get their brand partners involved with this project?
Well, first, I want you to just visualize, if you will, and let the audience visualize 3 concentric circles. And in one of those circles is the team, and in one of those circles are the fans, and in one of those circles are the sponsors. And if you imagine that like a Venn diagram, looking for where those circles overlap, that intersection is really important. We call it the value intersection, meaning sports teams, college properties can unlock a great deal of value if they understand that the fan is coming not for the sponsor, the fan is coming for a memorable, elevated moment. And we have this saying around our place that brand loyalty is forged in shared experiences. If sponsors will be very deliberate about finding where their brand promise connects with that of the sports team,
sure,
the fan can really have an elevated, memorable, engaging experience.
And so does Advent get involved, or how involved are you in that sales process or trying to help the team value a lot of these assets, right?
So that's a really great question. Our first task is to understand an item we call audience insight, which is to really understand what the humans want. I know that sounds strange, but often we come at things from a little bit of a textbook or a little bit of a marketing formula perspective. We need to ask the audience what are the things that are emotional for them? What are the things that connect them? And so to your question, the first stage that we focus on is audience insight, gathering original research. We have a proprietary method of doing that called story mining. And from story mining, we find the emotional threads, and then we create concepts that would elevate the fan experience. Those concepts then become inventory for the team to sell to sponsors. And often we'll amend, we'll alter, we'll vary those approaches, but all with the idea of honing in on what does the human want, where do we find the story of the team intersecting with the brand promise.
And are there any projects that you've worked on in the last couple of years or so that you think have really nailed that?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are 2 that I think of. One is in an arena, right? And it's for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Oklahoma City Thunder wanted to engage youth and children, wanted to round out an experience at their basketball games for youth and children. And so we created an experience called the Oklahoma City Thunder Kids Zone. And we brought it to life with a partnership with Oklahoma University Children's and Physicians Hospital. They came on board as a sponsor, and the whole theme was around relating to these heroes that you would see on the Thunder team,
Right.
but understanding their health and well-being, understanding their key metrics for their height or their weight or their vertical leap or their reach, and then letting kids engage in their comparison of those stats. And so we developed a lanyard that would facilitate the walk path that a child would have around the kid zone, that would allow them to track their metrics and then come back again to the next game and track their metrics again.
Yeah.
And so everybody wins. There's a relationship between the child and those pro players, and there's a relationship, a reinforcement with the brand promise of OU Children's and Physicians of health, well-being, participating in sports. Those are all where that brand aligns. And so that was a terrific environment to bring that to life. Another example is you've read a lot, you've written a lot about multi-use districts,
Yes.
right? And so the largest multi-use district that we were involved in was for the Dallas Cowboys. Bringing to life in 92 acres the Dallas Cowboys brand and not making it stale and in a museum. Charlotte Jones Anderson, who's their chief brand officer, wanted a living brand, one that looked back, but also that looked at the present, but also looked forward. And the task was to create Instagrammable moments throughout those 92 acres.
I've done it there.
Right?
Yep.
that you yourself want to be a part of your story, that you're emotional about. So that's deliberate. That was based on audience insight. It was through the process of true design thinking, trying to solve the human problem, and then what we call GSD, just getting it done, delivering it through our design build project.
What are the stakeholders that are in place? How is that different than just saying, hey, we have this, we have a stadium, this is the property, etc.?
That's a great question. I go back to that Oklahoma City Thunder example. In that case, the stakeholders are few. They're the audience and the fans that are coming through the arena. There's the sponsor, and there's the team. So that's a pretty straightforward constituent group. In a multi-use district, the stakes are totally changed, as you might imagine. So now you have office space tenants, people who desire to have their office and their company associated with the world famous Dallas Cowboys. Now you have retail tenants, people who want their restaurant or their retail store associated with the district. And what our collaboration with the Cowboys found is that ring of honor that you might remember that was part of the fan experience we created. Retailers were jockeying to be closer to the numbers that they felt like would be important or closer to a number. And the Cowboys were able to monetize that through a higher cost per square foot for that retailer because you're associating with a fan experience that's elevated. So the fan experience becomes this unifying thing. Now, there also, we knew that we would have lots of outsiders because the city of Frisco plays its 6 high school football games in the practice facility right there. So another totally different audience, the community. So we created these immersive interactive games. I don't know if you saw them there on the plaza, in Tostitos Plaza, some of them brought to you by Albertsons, that would bring to life an immersive experience. So the game reads your body mass using gesture-based technology. It's the only place we've ever seen where gesture-based technology has been installed outdoors in the weather, and the kid, the adult, is able to play the games. But here's the big payoff. We've got data that proves that lifts brand loyalty for the sponsor beyond any other kind of activation. That kind of immersive, engaging digital experience is very unique. And so more stakeholders, more diverse audiences in a multi-use district, and you really have to think about ways to really activate and create value across that campus.
So how is technology coming to play with a lot of these spaces and venues that you're working on?
Well, technology, I just want you to imagine for a moment, technology is great and it's troubling. And like any development, if it's taken to the extreme, it can be really troubling to the equation. We believe that technology is really driving fan behavior. So I want you to think about for a moment, 95% of young sports fans say that they use a second screen to watch sports.
Yep.
That's really important. Why are they doing that? What are the insights that they're developing from that second screen? What's the deep dive that they're doing? Then I want you to imagine that 74% of millennials are creating their own content and say that they prefer their created content over stock photography or stock video, something that media folks know a lot about, right? So what you see is a generation that fully embraces technology, but really wants to be their own content creators. And so what we have to do is we have to use technology to play to that. Now, I want you to just imagine for a moment, a lot of people talking about virtual reality and those Oculus goggles. I just want you to imagine for a moment, if I were to put those on right here with you, I have a singular experience that you're not a part of. And so unless I'm doing some sort of video capture of that experience, you're not sharing in that. Deloitte, the famous consulting firm, did a study, and they launched a term that's really important, and it's called the experience debt. And it goes like this. Young people are so connected by devices that they're missing, and they have this debt for a human connection. Yep. And if you look at what they're curating their Instagram and Twitter feeds with, it's human connections, it's elevated moments, as Chip and Dan Heath would say. So that's what they want to be a part of, is something that's memorable, something that's enviable, something that may create FOMO, which is another measured driver in the marketplace. And so what we need to do is use technology to engage them, to invite them in, and to have shared experiences. So there's a technology that we've created for the University of Arkansas that takes the phone that's in a user's pocket and lets them control a giant screen at a whole thing. But you can control it, and I can control it, and we're each having our own curated experience through a device. You don't have to download an app. There's no special technology, no wires. You're controlling the content on a big screen. That's the way users want to consume the experience, right?
Right.
I alluded earlier to the gesture technology at the Dallas Cowboys. You're aerobically engaged in the game that we serve up. It's not pushing buttons on a screen. Your heart rate is accentuated. That study that we've done, you can find that at rethinksponsorships.com, but that study actually proves that even the associated party that are watching the child or the mom or the dad play the game, even their brand equity is lifted because they are so engaged in that moment.
And what's keeping you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is that the consumption behavior of the fan is always changing. You know, before we saw fans who were very content to sit in a bowl, sit in an arena, sit in their seats, and consume a linear sporting event. Now, as we've been describing, we're seeing fans who want to consume an experience on their screen. They want to create their own content. Maybe they want to be on a deck and have a cocktail with their friends or a beer with their friends. Being at the game gives them proximity to something purposeful, but it may not be the definition of their experience. And so what keeps me up at night is we have to constantly be asking the audience, asking the fan, and trying to gain empathy for what do they want and how can we shape the experience to deliver to them. That's a quest that we won't be finished with. And so it helps us to really be on our toes.